It's funny how some of the biggest adversities and setbacks that you have in life can really be the caveat for you to go and pursue your passion, and really reflect on how you actually want to spend your life. And there's two major standout moments for me in my life so far that really made me reflect and go, what the F am I doing? And actually, how do I want things to be? The first one was buying a Honda Civic Type R when I was 18 years old, just not even a year into my oil and gas career, not even making that good money. But I remember the insurance alone being $3,000 a year. And let me tell you, that was a big chunk of my salary that I was taking home at that point in time. And I actually ended up having to saw in the car and put it off the road for 8 months because just couldn't afford the insurance and couldn't afford to run in and out of Aberdeen, which was an hour's drive each way with the fuel costs. And having to go and run to my dad basically to say, I need help, I can't afford this. And he knew what he was doing at the time, looking back now that I've matured, but he basically went and helped me buy a beat up white Suzuki Vitara. My mates, if you're watching this, you'll know the fucking one that I'm on about. And let me tell you how much of a humble experience that was, but also a realization on, it's not about these material things here. Like, what's the point in having the cost of this car on finance, the cost of this insurance for not being able to enjoy it? Like, I was just putting a noose around my neck. And literally, that humbleness that came with driving about that beat up Suzuki Vitara, the power steering was broken on, the wing was hanging off, and I remember having to duct tape it every 2 weeks just to hold it from flying off and hitting other cars. It was a very humbling experience, let me tell you that. And it was my big moment on, right, okay, this is liabilities here, and how can I really utilize assets better and make my money work harder for me than just pissing it down the drain. The second point that was really key for me was being made redundant from oil and gas in 2017. It was like a 2-year period where redundancies were happening at the company that I was working at. And I managed to dodge 4 rounds of redundancies prior to that. And that was the only source of income I had. I still had a passion for property, which started back in 2001 when I was 9 years old, when my mum and dad bought a 3-bed bungalow to rent out. And basically back then they paid 45 grand for this asset. They spent probably 10, 15 grand doing it up. I can't remember what it was back then. But we spent a lot of time there. As a 9-year-old, I was there with my dad and my mum in the evenings and at weekends, and was just kind of seeing what they were up to, some of the conversations they were having around, this will be for our pension, this will be longer term for this will be a really good investment for us longer term. And not even bearing in mind the kind of rental income and the monthly take home that they were taking from the property as well, which was massive for them at that point in time. And yeah, the seeds that were planted in me at that moment really just made me realize, when I had that experience with the car and the liability there, how important it is actually to get your money working as hard as possible and not just rely on one stream of income. So when that experience of going through the redundancy in 2017 happened, let me tell you, that was a massive reflection point for me to assess on how actually do I want to spend my time. The thing I didn't like about being employed was timesheets. People in control of your time, people in control of how you spend your day, what you focused on, and people passing their problems onto you, particularly from higher up management. And a lot of the time I just feel like, being brought up around a farm, I wasn't wired to take orders very well and instructions very well. So there was always this kind of burning entrepreneurial desire and the passion for property, and that whole reflection time when redundancy happened was a big moment for me to go, right, what am I going to do with this 5 grand of a payout that I've had here and received here? And it was investing in property, and particularly invest in my own education to get the fundamentals around how different property strategies work, how to really analyze deals, and ultimately to then go and ideally, which my plan was back then, invest in property to build up my own buy-to-let portfolio. And that took me down so many different routes, with starting from deal sourcing to then building up a buy-to-let portfolio. And then after 3 years of starting in property, being able to go full time and leaving my oil and gas career. So even after the payoff in 2017, I went into the whiskey industry for a year, working for a design, manufacture and install conveying equipment, basically, and milling equipment, a supplier for the whiskey industry, which was ace. It was a nice breath of fresh air from oil and gas, red tape and politics that there was. But I ultimately had the chance to go day rate contracting in oil and gas with an ex-client of mine from the same company that I got paid off. And it was always something that I had back in my mind, that I wanted to be contracting and kind of have that element of freedom to be your own boss effectively, even though you're contracting and working for someone else. So yeah, that really helped me build up additional savings and a pot to start investing in property as well. But let me tell you, like, juggling trying to build a property business and working full time while also still playing football 3 times a week, training twice and playing a game on a Saturday, it's hard. Like, it's hard to juggle all that. Sometimes there will be sacrifices that need to be made. Sometimes that will be at the impact of your own health and fitness. It will be at the impact of your own relationships potentially and spending less time with them. And sometimes a bit of selfishness comes with that as well, because me having known I'd invested X amount of thousands of pounds in my own property education, I needed to get that money back. I wanted to put that into work, and I wanted to prove to myself first and foremost that this investment was going to pay off. And thankfully now, looking back over the past 8 years, almost 9 years now since that redundancy happened, it was a massive pivotal moment for me. And sometimes those setbacks and those hard experiences and adversities can really, just be that catalyst that you need to really push on. So I'm going to be sharing over the course of this YouTube series, videos that are going to be coming up, various things around property, productivity, mindset, business, and various tips and tricks and strategies along the way, as well as storytelling around what I've been able to build up over the past 8 years, which has taken me to now form an SGA property group 3.5 years ago, where we have our own buy-to-let portfolio as well as my own. We have serviced apartments, we manage serviced accommodation, which we've now got 70 properties on our books. We coach others to build up their own property business, and I've actually helped a couple go full-time in property as well, which is fucking ace. Got a lot of fulfillment from that, as well as doing various joint ventures, being on Homes Under the Hammer as well. So I'll maybe link that in the show notes here as well for you to take a look over. But yeah, this is very much an introduction in terms of what really triggered me to get started in property. And yeah, I hope you enjoy.